Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Circus of Values, also known, of course, as the Steam Christmas Sale on the 26th of December. Almost said the 27th, then I won't lie. Anyway, shall we start? I think that's a prudent move. So, Counter-Strike Global Offensive comes to us at 50% off. That would be basically £6 Great British pounds, or if you're paying in dollars, then you're going to be paying $7.49, which isn't too bad. So, I don't think Counter-Strike Global Offensive requires too much of an introduction. It is, of course, the latest in a long line of Counter-Strike games, and the basic formula remains the same. There's a couple of different objectives, depending on whether you're a terrorist or a counter-terrorist. Either rescue the hostage, or, well, protect the hostages and don't let the counter-terrorists rescue them. Or plant a bomb, or don't let them plant the bomb, or if they do plant the bomb, defuse it. Pretty simple stuff. Obviously, sometimes, you know, depending on user-made maps, it can be a little bit different. So, for the most part, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, there has been some balance changes on certain maps. A recreation, if you will, on quite a few of them, and of course there's been changes graphically and so on, but the basic core mechanics remain the same. If you've not played Counter-Strike before, my only warning to you is you're probably going to die a lot. Particularly when you consider that some people have been playing since the beta of the original Counter-Strike, which of course is quite many moons ago. And despite the fact there have been some engine changes, inherently the game is pretty similar. So, if you're basically willing to go in, die a lot, but learn quite quickly and become pretty good, and also possibly really have a good time, then Counter-Strike's the one for you. If, on the other hand, you get frustrated at dying very quickly, then you're probably not going to be best served with Counter-Strike. The other problem a lot of people find with Counter-Strike, although some maps, aim maps specifically, they might have problems in the, well, quite simply put, if you die, say 10 seconds into the start of a round, of course being a little bit over the top, but you get the basic premise, then you have to wait until the round ends, and that can piss people off. Personally, I love Counter-Strike, despite the fact that I've not played it for a couple of years, and to watch professionals play it, it's a thing of beauty. Anyway, let's move on, shall we? What shall we continue with? Well, let's go with Kerbal Space Program. This is better than ever, ha ha ha, you see what they did there? Anyway, $13.79, which is a fairly odd and fairly exact price, but for dollars users, it's going to be $18, well, rounding it up. Kerbal is a pretty simple thing. You basically create your own space program. Now, obviously, it is still technically in beta. However, there have been numerous improvements. And yes, it is in early access. But as I said, it's pretty solid. There's no major crashes. There's no major issues as far as I'm aware with hardware. The best thing I can suggest, if you're interested in space, if you're interested in creating your own space, if basically you want to run NASA, this game's, or this application is for you. There's a demo of it available. I'd at the very least suggest giving the demo a try, personally. Next one is Risen 3, Titan Lords. So this is basically 20 Great British pounds, or if you're going to pay in United States dollars, it's going to cost you 25. So us Brits don't get a particularly bad price, and Americans don't get a particularly bad price either. So Titan Lords is, of course, the successor of Risen 2 and Risen 3, and how can I put this? Despite the fact that I actually didn't mind Risen 2, I thought it was a pretty good game. The issues with Risen 3 is that it didn't fix the issues that were present in the previous Risen. And quite frankly put, you get some rather stiff and quite obnoxious acting at points. I've heard it described as and I wouldn't exactly say this is accurate, but I've heard it described as a poor man's Witcher. And I think that might be a bit overly harsh, but the game has quite a few bugs, at least from what I've heard. So the overall consensus from critics, they kind of panned it, but from users, they didn't mind it. So what you might want to do is at the very least have a look at the videos. Personally, I liked Risen 2, but I couldn't get into Risen 3. I tried it for a little bit and I was like, nah, I can't play it, sorry. But maybe you'll feel differently. You know, everyone's got different tastes and all of that stuff. Next one, another game that quite a few people disliked, which surprised me, was the original, was Thief, which of course is a remake of the very golden boy, poster boy if you will, PC game. Anyway, this one is going to cost you £5 Great British pounds, or if you're going to pay in dollars, $7.49. This game also supports AMD Mantle, and it does make quite a lot of difference on performance. We actually use it as a benchmark here at RG2, and you know, it can be quite substantial depending on the GPU. You're looking at 10 to 20 frames per second, sometimes more, sometimes a little less, depending on the GPU and your CPU. Anyway, I have covered this on the channel, and I personally like it. It's not quite as in-depth as one would have hoped. Now, there are a couple of reasons for this. Some would blame the dumbing down of, you know, the fact that it's on next generation consoles. Some would blame the fact that it's more action-orientated. Some would argue that it was trying to appease too large of an audience. Regardless of whatever you want to blame, the basic premise is that it's not as open, it's not as deep as the previous Thieves. Now, of course, the basic premise here is you do still want to, for the most part, stay in the shadows, and the game still does reward you for sneaky actions and so forth. So, here's my suggestion: if you've not played the original Thieves, which, you know, is possible because they're fairly old games, despite the fact that one did come to the Xbox, the original Xbox. If you quite liked, let's say, Dishonored, if you like Dishonored, go ahead and buy Thief. I personally liked it, so check out a couple of videos, whatever you've got to do. I think it's a pretty good game. Maybe you'll disagree, but I thought it's pretty awesome. Next one, and this one's an absolute steal. This is probably one of the deals of the day, without question. 90% off for Brothers. £1.09, or if you're paying in dollars, it's going to cost you basically $1.50. I can't really say that this is a bad deal. This is an incredible deal. The only problem with this game, and I'll give you a fair warning just before you rush, in case you missed the Steam page warning, is that it does require a controller. This, for many, was considered to be one of the top games of 2013. It's a very emotional, puzzle-based experience, and it's got a fairly strong narrative. The graphics are quite pretty. It uses very strong camera angles, very subtle lines of dialogue, and the basic premise is you're controlling both children at once. So I actually really like this. It's a bit of a shame in some ways that it's not a cooperative title. I think that would be kind of cool. But as it is, I think it's a very solid experience, and I would highly recommend you check it out. Easily one of the deals of the day. Easily. Pretty much a steal at the price. Where are we? Banished. Okay, so this one's going to cost you £6 Great British pounds, or if you're going to pay in US dollars, it's going to cost you $8. What is this title? Well, this one is basically the premise of city building. So basically you are controlling a group, and they basically decide, hey, you know what, we don't like where we're living. Let's take up a new place and basically create a new city. This is pretty much the same as every other city building title I've ever come across in the basic premise. I don't really know too much about this. I know I've played it briefly around a friend's house, and I quite liked it. This one puts more emphasis on the people. In other words, people power rather than other resources. So really what you want to be doing is making sure that you're making the use of your kind of manpower. I personally haven't played it too much. I've heard it's pretty good. It doesn't require a killer machine to run, which is another benefit. Give it like a look at, say, I don't know, some videos or something like that if you're unsure. Personally, it wasn't my thing, but you know, that was me. Anyway, moving on rather swiftly, Anno 2070. Anno 2070 is going to cost you $7.49, which isn't too bad, might I add, or it's going to cost you, where is it, £5. So it's not a bad price for either party, to be totally honest with you. This one is a bit of an oddity. Now, the basic premise here is that it takes the idea of changing climate to a new level. And basically, the fact that, obviously, polar ice caps are melting and all of that kind of stuff, it runs with the idea, and basically runs into the idea that you're going to be wanted to create pretty much new cities, new worlds, new colonizations, if you will. You want to colonize small pockets of land, and for the most part, the game is well received. It's actually quite a cool title. But, you knew there was going to be a but, didn't you? There's always a but. But, if you look at people who have played the game on Steam, there's a hell of a lot of people who don't recommend the title. And it's the same if you Google around. And it's kind of weird, because suffice to say, it's actually not the game sucking that's the problem. It's the fact that Uplay and other titles are causing it to crash the game. In fact, one user says, and I quote, "Ubisoft is downright criminal. This Uplay thing is highway robbery. I tried everything to connect the game and be able to play on my own game. Went to the forum, fiddled with System32 folder, flushed my DNS, and I still wasn't able to connect to the goddamn brain hatred DRM." And so on and so on. Basically, this one's DRM issues. I have to confess, the fact that it has a free machine activation limit kind of takes it down a few notches. This is one of those games I would really recommend you do your research on before buying it. It's a solid title, but the DRM is pretty crippling. So do double check that. It's a massive shame. It's literally a case of the game itself is fairly solid, but you could basically find yourself being unable to play it. And I have to confess, going on kind of further with this, one of the issues I have with Ubisoft is Uplay. And I consider it to be a massive problem even with the console iteration of, say, Far Cry, let alone the PC. And they really need to resolve this, because it's pretty bad. And that is me being quite kind by saying pretty bad. As much as I kind of rage at Steam occasionally, and I sometimes rage at Origin for having some problems, I would basically take Origin any day over Uplay. And one of the primary concerns, or one of the primary reasons for that, at least with Origin, you can get your money back. So basically, if you buy an EA game through Origin, and you say this thing is a broken piece of crap, then you can get your money back. And I think that's quite fair. Anyway, that's me kind of getting well off the topic. Moving on, shall we? Let us do that before I go on a real tangent. Company of Heroes 2. It's going to cost you $7.49. That would be, of course, if you're paying in Great British Pounds. It's going to cost you $9.99 if you're paying in US dollars. This one is a fairly weird title. It's basically a strategy game, so it's set in, of course, World War II, and it's where basically Russia is trying to hold on to the invaders. This one's a little odd, and the reason I say that is because the original Company of Heroes 2, this is a very traditional strategy game, but the original Company of Heroes 2 was extremely well received, but this game not so much. There's some issues supposedly with DLC. Basically, it's very microtransaction-y, DLC-y, if you want. And the fact that supposedly there's quite a lot of issues with the basic gameplay. Basically, a lot of gamers felt that the DLC pushed back the game's playability. So, even if you look at the storefront, there is a ridiculous amount of DLC for this title. A ridiculous amount. So, whether you'll be kind of wanting to purchase this one, it's up to you. I don't think that it's a bad game. I've played it briefly around a friend who's really into strategies, and he really liked it. He said it's a pretty solid game. He was also a massive fan of the first one, but I don't believe he purchased any of the DLC. So what I'd suggest is kind of make your own decisions based on that. I I quite like the gameplay from the like 20 minutes that I played. I played a quick mission, but that's all I can say. So I don't want to say, you know, I don't want to condemn the game, and I don't want to, you know, praise the game based on that, because that's inherently unfair. Anyway, Shadow of Mordor is going to round us up. This one doesn't support the Japanese language, which I don't know how many of you will affect. But it's going to cost you basically $30, or if you're paying in Great British pounds, it's going to cost you $17.99. If memory serves, it's exactly the same price on Amazon. In fact, let me just double check that, because I don't want to lie to you. I don't want to lie to you, because that would be not cool. Actually, no, I think it's actually more expensive to download it, if memory serves. Yeah, it's actually slightly more expensive on Amazon than what it is to digitally download it. So it's a pretty good price, to be totally honest. I just want to make sure that it's not on Green Man or anything else, because I do remember they were doing a deal. Yeah, it's more expensive. Alright, so the best deal is going to be Shadow of Mordor on the Steam home front. It's not a bad game. I've been through this up-teen amounts of times before. The ironic thing is that they screwed themselves over in the eyes of the press, and a lot of YouTube critics, and, to be honest with you, a lot of gamers. The basic premise is that the game is good. It's a third-person title, of course, set in the Lord of the Rings universe, but basically what happened, you can Google this yourselves, and many of you probably know it anyway, is that they basically put out an embargo where anyone who did not have a deal, a brand deal, and by a brand deal it means that you have to be paid to review the game, and then they would criticize the review. In other words, if they didn't like something that was in your video or your review, they would basically make you rewrite it. And basically this brand deal got leaked, and a lot of shaming was done, and the really ironic thing about this is the game itself is really good. So it's kind of like, I don't know why they went this really shady route, where basically they told reviewers that they couldn't show bugs, they couldn't show glitches, they couldn't mention problems with the PC version. They had to basically be very, rather than review the game, they had to act as a salesperson, and that's not kind of really what we should be doing as either critiques or reviewers, whether you're a professional reviewer, whether you're a YouTube celebrity, which I don't really like that term, but whatever, YouTube personality I guess is the word, but whatever. If you're the owner of a tiny little blog that gets 3 people who read it every year, or whether you are IGN, it's irrelevant. You should not be acting as a salesperson if you're a reviewer. Anyway, moving on. But it's a pretty good deal for the game, however. I'm going to go through a couple of the games that are on the 12-hourly deal thing. In no real order, you've got The Gods Will Be Watching, which is a fairly solid title at $175. You also have Resident Evil 6. Resident Evil 6 is a really weird one. It's really weird to describe, because it's a good game, it's just not a good Resident Evil game. If you liked Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, and that's the game you're expecting, you better just forget it. Just don't go forward, because you're going to be very disappointed. If you are hoping for just a good co-op shooting, kind of fun, horror-y type of game, then you could do worse. It's also really fun in co-op, and it supports local co-op, and there's ways on the PC version, you can Google it yourselves, to if you've got a dual monitor set up, to make the screen basically go to 2 monitors. So one person's playing on one screen, one person's playing on another. It's not official, which is a ridiculous thing. They should have just made that kind of one of the features, but it's kind of cool anyway. So you might want to check it out. I think it's quite fun. I think it's a fun game, but it just they kind of missed out on some of the coolness. If you're looking for an actual survival horror Resident Evil, then you've got that on Green Man Gaming, along with some other deals that I went through all yesterday, so I'm not going to go through all of their deals all over again, because it's just kind of pointless. Similarly, we went through Humble Bundle has now finished. There was one other website that I wanted to mention to you, however, because it had some pretty good deals, and I'm just trying to find it. Haha, basically gamersrepublic.com which I haven't personally used, but I have heard they're pretty reliable. They have a sale going on at the moment. It's a couple of reasonable deals, nothing amazing, to be totally honest. But they do have a pretty good price for Hotline Miami at $174. Duke Nukem Megaton Edition, if you've somehow missed it, $174, which isn't bad. They've got all the Crusader Kings as well, and a couple of other deals that aren't amazing, but it's not too bad, so you could maybe check them out. I'd probably give you the best ones I like anyway. And that's about it. Most of the deals seem to be drying up. Origin still have their thing, and they've got some pretty nice deals going on at the moment. They've apparently got some deals going on. I've already been through the Amazon ones a couple of days ago, or yesterday, I don't remember which, where obviously they've got games like Assassin's Creed really cheap at the moment. Far Cry is really cheap. They've even got Call of Duty Advanced Warfare for $27.99, which is roughly the price you're going to be paying for it on Steam. But, with all of that said, there are also supposedly some deals going on if you are in America for GameStop. So you might want to check them out. That, for example, you've got Watch Dogs New for the PS4, Xbox One, and so forth, and that's like $20, which isn't too bad at all, so you might want to check that. Amazon US, they've got pretty good prices on some games as well, so do check them out. Aside from that, most of the Christmas deals are kind of running out, to be totally honest. The best ones we've got to look forward to now, without question, are Steam, and to be totally honest with you, if I had to rate this sale so far, out of, let's say, 10, I'm going to go with a 6. So far. There's been very few deals. So far, you know, you've got Shadow of Mordor, which was pretty good. You've got Brothers, which is pretty impressive in terms of pricing. And yesterday, you have South Park, which was pretty good in terms of price, and a couple of other games. But there's been very few, oh my goodness, that just needs to be bought kind of deals. Oh, actually, for Community's Choice, just to let you know, they've also got Dust and Elysian Tale for $2.99. This one's actually free if you own a PS4, but if you don't own a PS4, or you just prefer to play on the PC, not that it makes much of a difference, then that's not a bad price. So you could go ahead and pick that up as well. Oh, and they've also got a good price with FTL Advanced Edition, which is $174, which isn't too bad either. Anyway, hopefully you found the video helpful. I'm going to leave you guys to it. Take care, and bye for now.